somebody wants to take another sip. If they don't want to take a second sip, then to me that's probably too hot for her.
I think 30 seconds is a little bit long. I had a couple at the Mesa Cup that were hot for all of about 8 seconds, and I reckon that was just about the perfect number for me, because it was just when I was getting ready to have another sip, the heat fades away, and it was just about right.
Yeah. I won a Best of Show in New York with a Ghost Pepper Mead about 4 or 5 years ago. I beat out 700 and something people.
Wow.
So it really came out nice. And we brewed that at Sergio's place. We brewed a Ghost Pepper Mead. I brewed a Ghost Pepper Mead with him. My name's on all the bottles.
That's pretty cool.
It's all about that balance.
So what's your advice to those who are looking to make capsicum ales? Because I've tasted a lot of them, and quite a few of them don't achieve that kind of balance where you get to experience the hot, but it doesn't kill you.
Right, the heat and sweet have to balance. If they don't balance, it's out of balance. And everybody can say, well, this is the way I want it. Well, if that's the way you want it, it's fine. But if you wanted that mass appeal, I think, it shouldn't melt anybody's face. It should just be a balance of heat and sweet.
Yeah,
if it's an endurance event, it's not going to be any fun.
Well, as he says, if it destroys your palate for the rest of the night, then that's no fun, shoot.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody's heard of that beer, Ghost Face Killer. Have you ever had that?
No.
It's Ghost Pepper IPA. And you have it, and it's so far out of balance, and you're just like, why did I even take that sip? And I like, all those hot peppers, and I, like that 5-alarm chili, and, I go for that hot Indian food where they tell you, I want you to sign a waiver before you take a bite. I go for that, but I don't want to, have something where it's just like, let me see how hot I can make it. I'll put as much IBUs in with hops and then a whole ghost pepper in every 12-ounce bottle. It's really not enjoyable.
No. So do you find that the hotter the pepper, the more sweet the mead has to be, or where, what are you discovering in your adventures with peppers that enables you to balance them?
I think there's a very fine line, and it shouldn't be too hot. And I try to keep a spare meat around and for blending if I make something like that.
Okay.
I take a little traditional, I'll blend it in. And sometimes, even if, like I said, I have something in a barrel downstairs that, the boysenberry, I think it's going to be a little dry. I'm going to blend semi-sweet, or I guess it would be almost a sweet traditional, into that boysenberry to get that balance, because I don't want that raw honey character. Mm-hmm. So I would use that same 6-gallon carboy with that traditional in it, and I might blend that into a pepper mead.
Okay.
To get that exact balance of sweetness and heat that I want, that I'm looking for.
Now, are you tasting, like, putting the peppers in? I'm assuming you're putting the peppers in not right at the beginning, or where are you adding your peppers generally?
No, you get in the secondary, and I take them. I taste often.
Okay.
Because I believe that's the way. And like, I look at people and I see these recipes that people put up online, and like I said, if they're making it and they're happy with it, that's fine. When I see you put in 7 or 8 ingredients at one time, spices, like star anise, 3 cloves, 2 vanilla beans, chamomile, I don't really see how that's not coming out like a muddled mess.
Yeah, I tend to agree, especially if you're just starting out.
Right. And you know what? And everybody's different, and every recipe is different, and organics are so variable, and wildflower honey from Washington State and wildflower honey from Florida are 2 very different honeys, and,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just that there's so wide a variable there.
Yeah.
That I think people should just add 1 or 2 ingredients at a time and try to achieve that balance, and I think that balance is what really makes good mead from bad mead. And not that it's bad, but it's that one step above where you're like, wow, that's really nice. Like Tom Ripas, he won at Mesa Cup. He had a mead with 4 ingredients.
Yeah.
Mango, pineapple, ghost pepper, and habanero.
Yep.
That's a delicate balancing act.
It is, yeah.
Where you could taste all 4 flavors in his mead, plus honey.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but you don't know if he did it all 4 at the same time, or if he did 2 at a time and then added the other 2 1 at a time. Well,
that's true. But here's a guy who won the Best of Show twice.
Yeah.
Right.
At arguably the biggest one in the world. So I don't think he did it by accident.
No,
I'm not saying he did it by accident. I'm saying he probably did it
that he intentionally blended all of that together.
Yeah.
No.
And that's just my opinion. I don't know how he did it, but I would say he blended it together.
Yeah, my guess is that he probably was, like you say, you taste often, you know what it is that you want to achieve, and then judiciously add ingredients to get it to that place. And not be afraid to constantly be testing it and see, oh, okay, well, hey, that's not as, it doesn't have as much of the, XYZ spice as I wanted, so we're going to try a little bit more of that to bring it up a bit and keep it in balance,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And speaking as somebody whose first mead had 26 different spices in it, and of course I didn't know any better at the time. It was just recipe in this book, and it was terrible for 3 years. But I've been since that point. I think the most ingredients that I have had in a mead would be when I add, Christmas style spices to a sizer, and that's like 3 or 4 spices in with apples and with apple juice and honey, and that's it. That's been probably the most complicated I've gotten since the 26 spice mead. But it was also, you got to be tasting that like all the time. I get asked all the time. Somebody asked me the other day, well, what do you think about ginseng? And I said, well, I've never used it in a mead. I know I like ginseng tea, but I've never used it in a mead. I'd say make a tea, add it, taste it, add it, taste it, add it, taste it until you get it where you want it, and but pay attention. Be involved with your mead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just have this mental image
hot peppers.
Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Hot peppers have to be tasted all the time. Oak has to be tasted all the time.
Yeah.
Because once it goes too far, you can only blend something back into it.
Yeah, you can't un-oak it. That's for sure.
And when you get to that 12-gallon, that 15-gallon, that range. So now your 15-gallon plan batch that you over-oaked turns into a 22-gallon batch.
Right.
That's a lot of meat.
It is a lot of meat.
Especially for a home mead maker.
Never too much mead.
But maybe too big of a batch, though, I think is a possibility.
Comes to a lot of bottles.
It does, yeah.
It's never too big a good batch.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is it a good batch? That doesn't turn out that way. I mean,
well, that's true, too.
Yeah, I had 2 5-gallon batches, and both of them went sideways, blended them, and got one of the best meads I've ever created. But then I had 10 gallons of this, of something that I can't recreate, because both of the, the ones that went into the blending were meads that had issues, and one stopped too soon and couldn't get restarted, and the other one went way too dry. So, I can't duplicate that.
But you have 10 gallons of it.
Well, I did.
Which is good.
I did. I don't anymore, because once my friends tasted it, they descended upon me like a pack of hungry wolves, and then they were gone. So, yeah.
Well, it's possible that if you manage to do the same batches separately and then combine them again, even if they have not got the same issues, they might work out about nice.
Well, I could deliberately take a strawberry mead dead dry and then deliberately make a too sweet orange blossom mead. I mean, it's not hard to do it on purpose, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because that turned out to be one of the better meads that I've ever made. But yeah, it was just. Bobby, when you were saying too many ingredients, and I just kept thinking about that 26.
It's not that it's not possible. But I
hard.
just don't think when you get that 10 ingredients and everybody's putting them in primary, and you're like, I was like, well, what do you expect it to taste like?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it would be overwhelming or just muddled. It's hard to balance.
And if it doesn't taste like what you want, how are you going to know how to fix it? Because you won't be able to distinguish what's coming from what.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a really refined palate. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, right now for me, the largest number of ingredients that I'll put in if I'm not doing a cleaning out the freezer batch is when I'm doing like a chai spice mead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking of that too. Because you have to have a half dozen spices then. But then you use a tea, you make a tea that tastes like what you want it to taste like, and then you add the tea to your mead. I would probably now...
As a single ingredient.
Yeah, you can, and then it's
That's the thing, though. I mean,
it's a single ingredient.
Sometimes it depends on. I've used tea to figure out. Like, I wanted to know what spice I should put in with something. So what I did was I made a tea with like pretty much everything in the spice cabinet, including black pepper and oregano and like all of that stuff, just to see how it was going to taste. But the thing is, you don't always want the steeped flavor of it either.
Oh, true.
So I don't always do teas. I mean, I've found myself with ginger tea's the best way for me, but and mint tea's easier to deal with. But the time I did sage, I just chucked sage straight into primary.
Yeah, well, Rhodomel, I did that. I just
another year or two, it might even be drinkable.
Yeah, I say when I made my Rhodomel, I just chucked a metric butt ton of rose petals into primary at the time because, again, didn't know any better. And I waited until they turned into ghost rose petals, so basically until it sucked all the color out of them. Tasted it, and it had that kind of soapy perfuming character to it that happens sometimes. So I was like, crap, how do I fix this? What do I do now? So I was like casting about, and in the midst of my casting about and ruminating on it, I had gone down to my favorite Middle Eastern grocery/restaurant down in Raleigh, and they had bottles of rose water. And I thought, and so I bought the rose water and I put that in there, and it was food grade, so not perfumey stuff, but, food grade that you use for cooking. And so I used that and ended up with this amazing Rhodomel because it I don't know if it eliminated or it masked it, but the rose water balanced it out so that you got that rose flavor without the perfumey, slick kind of feel that rose petals seem to give off.
Yeah, lavender's one you have to watch too.
Yeah.
Lavender mead that's balanced is absolutely wonderful.
Oh, God,
but you do that one little blossom over, it tastes like palm olive.
Yep. It does. It tastes like lavender palm olive. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and Hamish is good.
We've all tasted a lavender mead like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I actually haven't. I wish I had because I adore lavender, but I haven't had an overdose lavender yet. So I'm probably going to have to make one before I learn better.
Well, there's a very fine line with lavender.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lavender green tea that I like a lot, but it doesn't really have much lavender in it. So I'm going to have to play with that before I actually do it.
Yeah, I haven't had that, but I have had a rose mead that was a tiny little bit like what you're saying there. It was a bit too floral, like you might get in soap.
Perfumey.
Soapy?
Yeah, it's soapy. It has a soapy character. And there was actually, and this was interesting, there was a film of, I guess, oil on the top of the mead when I made the Rhodomel. Yeah, and so what I did was I racked it, you rack out from underneath that and just leave that behind. So that helped with the texture of it because it had that soapy sort of texture. That helped with the texture, and then the rose water kind of brought out I guess it sort of backstopped the rose flavor, and I don't know how it changed it so that it wasn't overly, perfumey floral and back to like rose flavor rather than, rose perfume. Yeah. I also found that, just as a little tip for anybody that might be listening and is curious, if you're making a Rhodomel, rose syrup is a great way to back sweeten. If it goes a little dry, because rose syrup has that rose flavor, and it's basically just a simple sugar syrup. So, you're putting sugar in your mead, so get over it. But, it's like, it's not a lot, okay? We're not talking about dumping a gallon of it in there. I had like an 8-ounce bottle, and I used like a third of it. And it just gave it just the right amount of sweetness, brought the rose flavor up a little bit, and it was a stunning mead. I, probably wouldn't have entered it in the competition because some really astute judge would have been like, sugar, there's sugar in this mead. It would have been, I'd have got shot down probably, but it was good, and I liked it. And, everybody else did too. It disappeared very quickly. But that was, it worked out good. I thought it was great. Heather is another one. I did a mead with a base like a wildflower honey, but I used heather tips. That I got like an entire bag of heather tips from an herbalist friend of mine, and basically like the rose mead, just flung this giant sparge bag full of heather tips into primary and just let her go.